Welcome back to the Jay Ravato Show, and do we have a show for you today? Do we? Of course we do. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about Nick Shirley, how he brought the truth to the stand. And we're going to be talking about Bill Maher. We're going to start off with Nick Shirley to go over to Bill Maher. He's talking about old school liberalism versus whatever's going on the left right now. It's outlandish. It's atrocious activity going on the left. They're storming churches in Minneapolis. This is all crazy things that's going on right now. And Hillary being subpoenaed for contempt of court. It's the entire Democrat Party. We're going to get into all of that on the Jay Ravato Show. The whole thing's a sham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Shirley, thank you for your testimony today and the work that you've done. Americans hear these numbers of the fraud that we have, and whether it's 10,000 or 10 million or 10 billion, sometimes the numbers, you almost become desensitized to it.
Right.
And so the way that your video was able to show people the fraud sort of in real life actually happening, I think opened a lot of eyes and has helped to catalyze a level of scrutiny that we really should have had before. So you mentioned in your testimony that you think that what you discovered in Minnesota, that this is not isolated to that state, but likely exists in other parts of the country as well, correct?
Correct.
What makes you think that?
Shame.
Well, now you're seeing, since I've posted that video, lots of other people have started to go to other locations, for instance, in Ohio or in Maine or in California. They're also seeing the similar fraud take place in other daycares, for instance, in a lot of other locations.
Yeah, I have a particular interest in California, being from that state, and we know that there's been a lot of fraud. There was $32.6 billion that's been confirmed in unemployment insurance fraud. There's 1.2 million fraudulent community college applications. Have you gotten any sense, or have you seen any signs there that sort of are similar to what aroused your suspicions in Minnesota?
Wait one moment, please. Let's address that really quickly. I'm not the one to hear some information and just slide right past it. What we just now heard, and maybe I need to pull a pen and a pad out, but what we just now heard was they were doing fraudulent activity with community college applications. Roll the clip. This is crazy.
Yeah, and fraud in California might be worse than the fraud in Minnesota.
Wow.
What makes you say that?
Well, $24 billion went missing for homelessness. They've been trying to build this train for years, yet there's hardly anything to prove for that. Fires.
Yeah, those are good points. So you look at let's run through a couple of those because I mentioned the areas where we have confirmed fraud, but then you also have these areas where you have so much spending, and then we look at what results from that spending, and there's nothing. So $24 billion in homelessness, and yet the homeless population went up, and a state audit found that they couldn't even figure out where the money went or what the outcomes linked to that spending were. Is that something that is kind of a red flag for you?
Yeah, it's a major red flag, and you don't even have to be smart to be able to know that that's a red flag.
Well, unfortunately, our state legislators haven't managed to figure.
They're saying that there's a ghost that the taxpayer money is going to. There are many ghosts. There are millions and millions and millions of ghosts that are being paid. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that these are fraudulent activities going on in these states. These people are doing fraud all over the place.
They're not smart. No, but yeah, I mean, it's so obvious, and that's what we saw in Minnesota is how complicit the government has been in enabling this fraud to happen. Quality Learning Center had over 90 violations, yet they continue to give that daycare $1.9 million.
Yeah, that's a great point. The political accountability just hasn't been there, and that's what enables it to continue. So then you mentioned the high-speed rail as well. So there has been about $18 billion spent so far. No track has been laid, and not a single passenger has ridden the train. So when you spend $18 billion on a train and there's no train, does that raise suspicions for you?
It's a ghost train.
So you think that might be something worth looking at?
For sure.
Wow.
We also had a $650 million 911 service that they scrapped after 6 years, so absolutely no value from it. Maybe that's another example where there might at least be questions.
I think you got a lot in California.
All right, well, we'll look forward to seeing what you find. We're certainly trying to use whatever tools we have here to bring more accountability in California as well. Mr. Dexter, I wanted to also ask you a couple of questions about your work, because you have extensive experience on the law enforcement side trying to detect fraud. That's actually how in California we discovered the EDD fraud, the unemployment fraud, is it wasn't the state suddenly figuring it out. It was district attorneys who came together and investigated and in fact pointed to the fact that the state had let this happen and failed to heed their warnings and hadn't taken basic fraud detection steps. So Is this something that you encounter? Like, what kind of internal controls make it so fraud is more difficult, and what type of lack of internal controls make it so fraud is easier?
Well, I would say the biggest thing was the fact that when we tried to investigate this, once we started bringing cases forward and it showed that the number of centers that we investigated were Somali, the biggest roadblock was the fact that they didn't want to follow through on these cases. They
right, because if you follow through on a case with a Somalian, then you're going to be considered a racist, KKK, and we're going to get into a video where Bill Maher talks about that. He talks about how the new Democrat Party, just the smallest person, down to Joe Biden's wife. She was Joe Biden at one time. It was one time when Joe Biden couldn't even be Joe Biden. He had to step in with Jill Biden, or Dr. Jill, which didn't work out too well.
Shut down investigations. They made us, in light of the report from this outside management firm, we spent nearly a year pulled away from our investigations because one of the things they determined was that when our unit started, we didn't have a proper case management system for recording and keeping track of the tips. So as investigators, we instead had to spend nearly a year entering past complaints made to DHS into a newly created database. We couldn't do our investigations because of that. So they
like I said before, they were trying to stop the investigations. They were doing anything and everything in their power to suppress the lawful investigations, just like in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where they're trying to stop lawful ICE agents from doing lawful detainment on law-breaking, non-law-abiding citizens. You have criminals. If you're a Democrat, you have to go by the Democratic code or law. And that's to be very sensitive, very emotional, and live out of the hemisphere. Your mind and your thoughts have to process in another world in order for them to come out in your reality. Let's see what Bill Maher's talking about, how now Bill Maher has to disguise himself in order to be a liberal, but he doesn't. And they shame him for that.
I used to get nominated for everything, and then the wokeness came in, and then I was considered conservative. Which
are you bad?
Ridiculous. So I was what I call soft canceled. Yeah. Where
they almost canceled Bill. Well, see, they almost canceled Bill because Bill Maher he stays in the middle. Well, personally, in the middle to me is kind of like riding the fence. I hate riding the fence because that's a man who doesn't stand for anything, falling for everything. You get it. You know what I'm saying? But Bill Maher tells the truth about the liberals, and they hate him for it. That's all.
Bill Clinton liberal, which is from the 90s, which is now called a Nazi.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
You're a white supremacist.
It's ridiculous. So they call you a Nazi and a white supremacist because you are basically basing your values and your rules off of common sense. In a nutshell, they don't like you because you're using your common sense and common knowledge. What they can't control, they try to kill.
They have turned over documents, as I said numerous times today, and I've said numerous times on most of the networks that are here today. We would like for the pace to pick up. We want to get the documents. We're not going to let her off the hook, but from a legal standpoint, she is complying with the law, and we expect to get the documents very soon.
In addition to your subpoena, though, are you concerned that she has not complied with?
No, with my subpoena, she's complied. She's turning over documents again.
But also the Epstein Files.
Well, the Epstein Files Transparency Act is a Judiciary Committee thing. They put a date on it. She's going to be in front of the Judiciary Committee in 2 weeks, and I think that's the important thing with what the Democrats were trying to say today about Bondi. And look, no one on our side is defending Bondi. Let me be very clear. No one on our side is defending Bondi. But we have to recognize there are a lot of...
So the whole thing is with the documents and Pam Bondi, I'm going to bring you guys up to speed as much as I know. So I think what the whole thing is with Pam Bondi is that they're expecting her to release all of the documents at one time in a slew of documents, just release them, dump them all without vetting them, just send them on out. But I think that's not her job. I think her job is to vet the documents and send that documents out in an orderly fashion. But this is what the Democrats want.
Documents. They produced documents, I think, on 2 different document drops. The first one, the Democrats complained there were not enough redactions. In the second drop, they complained there were too many redactions.
Right, of course.
So, ever how many pages we've heard numbers range from several 100,000 to several million pages of document. That's a lot of eyes that are going to have to be over it and review it to try to make the redactions, because the victims have made it clear to us that they want anything pertaining to their privacy redacted, and that's the impression I'm under that the Department of Justice is trying to do.
Mr. Chairman, is it important, is there still an opportunity for the Clintons to negotiate some sort of satisfaction of the subpoena, even though you've taken this step with contempt?
There's always an opportunity. It's going to be 2 weeks before this is on the floor. We're going to have to notice this is going to be treated like any other bill. We're making sure every I is dotted and every T is crossed, because they have a very expensive legal team. So obviously, there are going to be a couple of more days this week, depending on the weather. Then there'll be 3 days' notice, and then we can vote on it. I've been assured.
What does he mean by expensive legal team, eh? He said the Clintons have a lot of money. Huh?
We're going to vote on it. So that's 2 weeks, because we're going to be off a week. They're going to have 2 weeks that they're going to theoretically be able to negotiate. But one thing that I want to make very clear, a lot of what the Democrats were saying today, and I'm not accusing the Democrats on the committee of lying. I'm accusing the lawyers for the Clintons of not being truthful. They were not in good faith negotiating. They never made a proposal where there would be an actual transcript. And I don't think anyone in the media would accept any type of interview without a transcript. Then you're going to have notes, and it's going to be Clinton's word against.
See, and this is what I learned this in court myself. One time I had a court case against a company, and the company, they had a lawyer and so on and so forth. I'm not a lawyer. I did pro se. And what I learned by being a pro se is that you have to have all your T's crossed and your I's dotted and so on and so forth, because you can slip up and not have a transcript. And if you don't have that transcript, then you can't carry it on to the next higher court. And that matters if you want to challenge the outcome.
My word, Garcia's word against my word, that's no good. You know, there should be a recorded, at the very least, transcript, if not audio and video. I would argue all three.
Right. This is true. This is true. This is very valid information that I had to learn the hard way. The deposition. That is the law. That is what is considered legal in court, and I don't think anyone in the media would argue against that. So, yes.
Thank you, Chairman Comer. What specific steps will oversight Republicans take to ensure that the Clintons are not treated differently than others who have been held in contempt of Congress, like Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro?
Well, the process will be once it goes on the full House floor, and I expect a lot of Democrats to vote on this on the floor. And then it'll be delivered to the Department of Justice, and I think that question then could be asked to the Attorney General.
Mr. Chairman, the argument from the Clintons was that they had provided sworn declarations when they received the subpoena and were asked to testify. They argue that other folks who were asked to testify, you accepted the sworn declarations, but you wouldn't accept it as feasible for them. Why weren't the sworn declarations enough for the Clintons?
Because the people that we accepted the sworn depositions from, they replied that they had no relationship and they weren't directly involved in the Epstein investigation. There are no pictures of Merrick Garland or James Comey or Eric Holder who are Democrats, I might add, and Jeff Sessions, who's a Republican. Those were the four that we accepted the declarations from. There's no evidence that anyone's seen, no pictures anyone's seen of them with Epstein or Maxwell, nor is there any evidence that they were directly involved in the investigation. Now, if we find out those declarations are false, then they've committed perjury, and they know that. So they complied with our subpoena. And again, there was no evidence. And remember, let's be very clear here. This all came about from a subcommittee hearing in this room where Democrats made a motion, Summer Lee, to subpoena the Epstein files, and then Scott Perry made an amendment and put all these names on it, and everyone voted for it. That's how the whole Epstein investigation was born in the Oversight Committee, and that's where the names came from. Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton. Everyone besides the Clintons have complied, and 2 Republicans actually.
And so you know that if Donald Trump would have done something like that, of course he would have been in contempt of court. He would have been at court every day. There would have been protests. There would have been calls for him to step down as the president.
They sat down for hard-hitting depositions. You can look at the transcripts with Barr and Acosta, and the Republicans weren't any less confrontational with their questioning than the Democrats. We are sincere. We want to know the answers. We want to get the truth to the American people. We expect Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice to deliver the documents, and we hope that people are finally held accountable for crimes. And we want to know why did the government drop the ball for the victims, and how can this be prevented in the future?
When do you expect Pam Bondi to release those documents? It's been more than a month since the statutory deadline, and there have only been 2 drops of documents.
Okay, he's going to talk about why they're bringing them to court as they should. Let's find out why anyone would have a problem with the Congress okaying this process. This process is done all the time. House Oversight Committee marks up resolutions against the Clintons.
Plainly and lay the facts out what's really happened in this committee. We are 1 week out from Bill and Hillary Clinton, who did not show up for their depositions. 1 week, and we're already having a markup to hold them in contempt. Meanwhile, the Department of Justice has been legally obligated to hand over the full unredacted Epstein files to this committee since August, the same exact subpoena that they are using to hold the Clintons in contempt. And please note that these resolutions are allowing the DOJ to prosecute the Clintons for the exact same things that the DOJ itself, they have handed over 1% of the files and heavily redacted. We are 5 months overdue, Mr. Coomer, if you've made no effort to bring in Pam Bondi. So no, the difference is not clear. You have made no effort to demand any answers, to exert any pressure. So with that, Mr. Chair, I do have an amendment at the desk which would hold Pam Bondi in contempt for noncompliance with the bipartisan subpoena that you issued on August 5th, 2025.
You know, the Democrats love to play tit for tat. The beginning of this matter started with Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton being called to court to testify on the Epstein files, and they didn't want to come to court. That's contempt of court.
I hope that my colleagues will support. I yield back.
Minority's time's expired. We're still debating the measure, and we'll take up your amendment once we finish debating the initial measure. I just wanted to respond to a couple of things. I agree. We need to hear from Ghislaine Maxwell. We've been trying to get her in for a deposition. Her lawyers have been saying that she's going to plead the 5th, but we have nailed down a date, February 9th, where Ghislaine Maxwell will be deposed by this committee. Now, her lawyers have made it clear that she's going to plead the 5th. I hope she changes her mind, because I want to hear from her, just like I want to hear from her. What's that?
You said the difference is clear.
Turn on your mic, Trump.
It is.
What'd you say?
If the difference is clear, the difference here is that they are also trying to negotiate. She says she doesn't want to do it. You have not moved in the same way. So you are actually not applying the same standard here across the board. The DOJ is in the same exact subpoena. Ghislaine Maxwell says she won't do it. Bring her in then.
You're out of order, Ms. Lee. You're out of order.
The Democrats remain out of order.
So we were going to depose Ghislaine Maxwell, February 9th.
Where are the contempt charges, Mr. Chairman?
You're out of order too, Mr. Garcia. And we will proceed with that deposition. Ms. Lee said the Clintons just missed their deadline by a week. We have been negotiating with the Clinton attorneys for 5 months.
Mr. Chairman,
exactly.
whose time are we speaking on right now?
This is my time. This is my time. I recognize myself, so I have 5 minutes.
You already had your 5 minutes.
All right, well, I'm about finished anyway. I haven't used 5 minutes. I've used about 1 minute. But
you used your full 5 minutes, sir.
No, I haven't used.
All right, let's get back into the video.
You say you're confident the Attorney General will comply. When do you expect the full documents to be out? And is there a deadline by which you expect her to produce the documents, or else you would pursue something like contempt?
I was hoping the documents would be dropped today, or whatever they've redacted thus far. I would be shocked if some of the documents aren't dropped before her testimony for the Judiciary Committee. When we met privately, Republicans and Democrats, for 2 hours, is subpoena the estate. I did that. I had no idea what was going to be in those documents. It could have been very damaging to Republicans. It could have been very damaging to very important people. I had no idea. We want the truth. No one on my committee said, don't subpoena the estate. We want it. Everyone voted for the discharge petition except one. We want the documents. We want to get answers. We want to hold people accountable, and we're not protecting anyone who committed any crimes.
Given the point you made about the photos and the personal relationship that former President Clinton had with Jeffrey Epstein, should President Trump also be subpoenaed because he had a personal relationship with Epstein?
Well, obviously, President Trump's answered a lot of questions, and I'm looking around the room, and many of you have asked President Trump questions about Epstein, and I'm confident President Trump's going to have to answer more questions from you all. You're very curious.
Under oath by your committee.
Well, there's never been a sitting president come under oath in an oversight committee hearing, but we'll see what how this plays out. We want to get the truth, and look, I'll go back to what Bill Barr said, who I don't think anyone would argue is a big fan of President Trump. He said under oath in the deposition that he believed that if there had been anything damaging about Donald Trump in the Epstein files, that it would have been released before the election.
What they're trying to do is always pivot. They're always trying to distract and point fingers at the other party. We're going to go deeper and we're going to find out what they're trying to hide, because that's what people do. That's human nature. The more you try to hide and suppress something, the more we want to figure it out.
Democrats who voted for this?
I was not. I was always hopeful that some Democrats would vote for it. Look, when we were in that meeting with the victims, there were some Democrats, and they were the ones that voted in favor of holding the Clintons in contempt. They were sincere about wanting to get the truth, and they were sincere that they didn't care if the victimizers were Democrats. They didn't care who they were. They wanted to provide accountability and get some justice for the victims. So I felt like in my heart there would be Democrats vote for it, and I'm very, very proud of the ones who did. And I might add, more Democrats voted for this than against it.
And what about the concern about setting a bad precedent here, of having a former president come in, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of what you think that you need him for, but the idea that that goes down a very slippery slope?
Well,
when we've had the Supreme Court rule that the current president is immune from any type of prosecution, and you're going to drag a former president in here, conceivably.
Well, look, this was voted on by the Democrats as well in the committee.
But the concern about the precedent.
Well, look, I mean, no one's above the law, Chad. And there are a lot of questions about the numerous visits that Epstein had to the White House when Clinton was president. There are numerous questions about the number of times that President Clinton flew the post-presidency on Epstein's plane. Again, no one's accused Bill Clinton of any wrongdoing, but we have a lot of questions. And to my knowledge, he's never sat down with any of you and answered any questions.
And the main thing, the pictures that we saw of Bill Clinton versus the pictures that we saw of Donald J. Trump are completely different. I would have those in question, because I can't believe someone would be in the pool with other women if they're married.
Fox News alert, Ilhan Omar under investigation after racking up millions while she was in Congress. Senior national correspondent Kevin Cork has it. What's up, Kevin?
Good to see you, my friend. What's the old saying? Follow the money? Well, that's precisely what the House Oversight Committee is doing.
Good.
They are probing squad member Ilhan Omar's skyrocketing family wealth, Jesse, especially in the wake of that $9 billion, some would argue $19 billion, Somali social services fraud scandal that exploded in her district in Minnesota. The Oversight Chair, James Comer, says his team's lawyers are exploring the extraordinary step of subpoenaing Omar's spouse over his curious business practices. Republicans want to know how the Somali-born Omar and her politically connected husband Tim Minette went from being nearly broke to being worth around $30 million in just a year, according to her.
Hey, listen, these are things that normal citizens wouldn't be able to get away with in the first place.
2024 disclosure forms. Quoting Comer now, there are a lot of questions as to how her husband accumulated so much wealth over the past 2 years. It's not possible. It's not. And he's a money guy. Minette and his partner, Will Haler, back in 2022, formed an investment firm, Jesse, named Rose Lake Capital. They had $42 in their bank account at the time, but in a year, up to $25 million, according to Omar's filing. By the way, he also has a wine business that went from next to nothing to millions on its books. Not surprisingly, associates were so perplexed about the irregularities, they brought information.
I think that's called money laundering. You guys seen Ozark?
Attention to the feds to, look into it.
Yeah.
Now, for her part, the Congresswoman has repeatedly, and I say defiantly, denied any wrongdoing, while being also careful to criticize the ongoing probe. But, sometimes they say, Jesse, the ones who yell the loudest have the most to hide.
Most definitely.
Well, innocent until proven guilty. I'm sure everything was perfectly legal. We're just checking to find out. Kevin, good to see you.
Like I said before, so the Democrats, they have a bias complex. they're not able to point out the fraud that's going on. I'm surprised that they voted to bring Hillary and Bill in. But, you know, they'll get a lot of pressure for that because they're voting for the files to be released. The problem that I'm seeing go on inside of the Democrat Party, they have a complexity that is going to divulge until they notice that the wrongdoing is right on their side. The mope is in their eye. This has been the Jay Bravado Show. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember to like, subscribe, and share so they can continue to bring you the information from the Jay Bravado Show. And as always, I love you.